In November 2017, a cold stillness settled over one of Toronto's most prestigious hockey development facilities. The International Youth Hockey Showcase had drawn scouts, coaches, and analysts from across North America, all searching for the next generation of elite talent. More than 200 teenage players from 15 countries filled the arena, each carrying years of preparation and expectation. Among the assembled professionals sat Marcus Thompson, a towering figure in Canadian youth hockey whose reputation commanded quiet attention wherever he went. Decades of experience had shaped his philosophy, built on the belief that greatness in hockey was born early through structured training, constant ice access, and elite competition. His methods had produced professionals, his manuals guided national programs, and his opinion carried weight. When the list of international participants was announced, interest rippled through the crowd until one name caused a pause. A player from the Philippines, a country without a hockey tradition, had entered a space dominated by nations where ice rinks were cultural institutions. The contrast alone invited skepticism, even before the young athlete stepped onto the ice. Miguel Santos stood out long before he touched the puck. At 16, he was smaller than most of his peers, with a lean build shaped more by street sports than organized athletics. His background only deepened the doubts circulating among observers. He had grown up in Manila, where ice rinks were rare and expensive, learning hockey through improvised games on pavement using inline skates and borrowed equipment. His first real encounter with ice had come just 6 months earlier through a cultural exchange scholarship. As drills began, his skating betrayed that reality. His turns lacked polish, his stops were uneven, and his backward strides lagged behind players who had trained since childhood. For Marcus Thompson, the assessment seemed straightforward. Years of experience had trained his eye to spot developmental gaps instantly, and Miguel's deficiencies aligned perfectly with everything Marcus believed about hockey infrastructure. This was not mockery, but certainty. To him, the outcome felt inevitable. Enthusiasm alone could not overcome a decade-long disadvantage in a sport built on early specialization. After watching in silence, Marcus stepped forward and halted the session. His voice, calm but firm, carried across the ice as he called Miguel over. The attention of players, scouts, and coaches turned toward the exchange. Standing face to face, Marcus spoke with professional courtesy but unmistakable finality. He explained that hockey was not a sport one could enter late and expect to master. Ice time, he said, was foundational. Skating technique, positioning, and situational awareness developed only through years of repetition in competitive leagues. Street hockey, while admirable as recreation, could not replicate the demands of real play. Others nearby echoed the sentiment, noting that hockey culture depended on systems unavailable in tropical countries. Without rinks, coaching pipelines, and youth leagues, producing competitive players was unrealistic. Miguel listened quietly, his expression steady despite the public nature of the critique. The words were not new to him. He had heard variations of them from administrators, rink officials, and peers since arriving in Canada. What remained unseen was the depth of preparation that had occurred far from frozen surfaces. Miguel's journey into hockey began years earlier through a Canadian teacher working in Manila who introduced the sport to neighborhood children. What started as curiosity became obsession. With no ice available, Miguel and his friends adapted. Basketball courts became arenas, parking lots transformed into rinks, and battered inline skates replaced blades. They studied professional games online, memorizing patterns, puck movement, and spatial awareness. They built their own leagues, enforced their own rules, and played daily under unforgiving conditions. Rough pavement demanded extraordinary control, creativity compensated for limited space, and improvisation became survival. Those years forged instincts rarely taught in structured programs. Yet none of that was visible during early drills. To experienced coaches, Miguel appeared underprepared, even misplaced. When he finally spoke, his response was respectful but firm. He acknowledged the technical gap but suggested that learning the game differently might cultivate strengths that conventional systems overlooked. The idea was met with polite skepticism. Fundamentals, Marcus replied, were non-negotiable. Creativity without structure could not replace years of disciplined training. Still, Miguel pressed forward with a proposal that shifted the room's energy. Miguel suggested that theory be tested through competition. Instead of debate, he proposed a game. His team, composed of players from non-traditional hockey countries, would face one of Canada's elite youth squads. Brazil, Kenya, India, Thailand, and the Philippines were represented among players who had learned the sport through unconventional means. One game, he said, would reveal whether different paths could lead to comparable results. The room fell quiet. The challenge was bold, bordering on audacious. Marcus hesitated, weighing dismissal against curiosity. Eventually he agreed, confident that traditional training would prevail. The match was scheduled months later to allow preparation. In the intervening time, Miguel's team trained relentlessly, not to imitate Canadian systems, but to translate their street-honed instincts onto ice. When July arrived, the arena filled with spectators, scouts, and media. What began as an experiment had become a referendum on hockey development itself. Two philosophies were about to collide, not just on the scoreboard, but in how the sport understood talent, access, and possibility. The Canadian team entered the arena with unmistakable cohesion. Their equipment matched, their warm-ups synchronized, their movements polished through years of shared training. They embodied the system Marcus had spent decades refining. Miguel's international team arrived without spectacle. Their gear varied, their routines informal, yet there was an alertness in their posture that suggested readiness beyond appearances. When the puck dropped, the early moments reinforced expectations. Canada controlled possession, executed clean transitions, and applied disciplined structure. Miguel's team struggled to keep pace, their skating still lagging behind elite standards. Then something shifted. Instead of forcing themselves into familiar patterns, Miguel's team began playing the way they knew best. Movement became fluid, passes unpredictable, and spacing unconventional. What traditional systems labeled as risky, they treated as opportunity. Defenders hesitated, goalies reacted late, and structured formations began to fracture. The Canadians remained skilled, but they were suddenly reacting instead of dictating play. The game had entered unfamiliar territory, and its outcome was no longer assured. As the match progressed, creativity replaced convention. A Brazilian player delivered a no-look pass through traffic that defied textbook logic but found its mark perfectly. A Thai forward executed a deceptive maneuver that disrupted defensive reads entirely. Miguel's puck control, shaped by years of navigating uneven pavement, translated into an ability to protect possession under pressure. Scouts leaned forward, recognizing skills they rarely saw developed in traditional environments. By the second period, frustration appeared on the Canadian bench. Systems designed to counter predictable patterns struggled against improvisation. Miguel's team lacked technical refinement in skating, yet their vision, adaptability, and fearlessness created scoring chances that equalized the contest. When Miguel scored late in the third period, combining raw creativity with newly acquired ice technique, the arena erupted. The game ended tied. The scoreboard mattered less than the implication. Players from countries without hockey infrastructure had competed evenly with Canada's best youth development program. The assumption that access alone defined potential had been challenged in front of everyone who believed it unquestionable. When the final whistle sounded, Marcus Thompson skated toward center ice. The crowd quieted, sensing the moment's significance. Standing before Miguel and his teammates, Marcus spoke openly. He admitted that his understanding of development had been incomplete. Infrastructure mattered, he said, but it was not exclusive. What he witnessed was not success despite unconventional training, but success because of it. Street hockey had demanded creativity, resilience, and problem-solving that structured systems sometimes suppressed. Turning to fellow coaches and scouts, Marcus emphasized that passion and repetition, even under imperfect conditions, could produce excellence. Miguel was not an exception, he said, but evidence that talent could emerge anywhere people loved the game deeply enough. The acknowledgement resonated beyond the arena. Videos of the exchange spread rapidly, igniting discussions worldwide about access, equity, and how sports identify potential. Hockey's boundaries had shifted, not through argument, but through performance. In the weeks that followed, the impact continued quietly. Development camps invited Miguel to train alongside top prospects. Hockey organizations explored outreach programs in countries previously ignored. Coaches began incorporating street-style drills to encourage creativity among young players. Miguel, however, returned to Manila. He helped establish organized hockey programs while continuing to mentor neighborhood children on the same courts where he learned the game. Scouts now traveled to observe a community once dismissed entirely. Marcus later summarized the lesson simply: perfect conditions produce polished players, but imperfect conditions often create innovators. Hockey had not been redefined, but expanded. The sport had learned to recognize excellence in unexpected forms. Miguel's story did not dismantle tradition, it enriched it. The game remained the same, but its future grew wider. Where once there were limits, there was now possibility. And in that realization, hockey found something as valuable as talent itself: humility. The narrative of development had changed not through theory but experience. Hockey's global future now included voices and paths previously overlooked. For Miguel and his teammates, the showcase was never about proving superiority. It was about demonstrating that passion could bridge gaps infrastructure could not. For Marcus, it was a reminder that even decades of expertise must remain open to challenge. Excellence, the game revealed, does not belong to one climate, one system, or one tradition. It emerges wherever dedication meets opportunity. That understanding reshaped how talent would be found, nurtured, and respected going forward. As hockey programs adapted, conversations expanded beyond sport. The showcase became a symbol of how assumptions can limit potential when access is mistaken for ability. Miguel's journey illustrated that preparation does not always look the same, but its results can be equally powerful. Creativity born from necessity carries value systems cannot manufacture. That truth resonated far beyond the rink. In Manila, street courts buzzed with renewed energy. Young players saw themselves reflected in Miguel's path. They understood that their environment was not a barrier, but a different classroom. Where ice was scarce, imagination filled the gap. The game continued, not despite limitation, but shaped by it. Marcus incorporated these lessons into his coaching philosophy, encouraging future trainers to seek potential beyond conventional markers. Skill, he taught, was not always polished early. Sometimes it arrived raw, forged through adaptation and persistence. The responsibility of coaching, he realized, was to recognize it. Years later, the showcase remained a reference point in discussions of player development. Not because of the score, but because of the shift it created. Hockey had learned that its reach was broader than it believed, and its future richer because of it. Miguel Santos never sought to redefine hockey, yet his presence did exactly that. By standing on the ice and trusting the path that shaped him, he revealed a truth long overlooked: excellence has many origins. When opportunity meets passion, even the most unlikely beginnings can reshape an entire sport.